As of the 26th of July, 2026, Story of Alicia has added breeding to the game's playtest. Although it is a very exciting and core feature of the game, it can be intimidating at first for those who don't fully understand its complexity, and frustrating even for experienced players. Today, I'll be diving into the breeding system, talking about all the different factors, explaining the user interface, breeding acronyms, and what I recommend beginners do when getting started, giving you everything you need to know at this time coming into the breeding update. Overview of the breeding system. The breeding system is a means of producing better horses in the game to race with. Although the horses in the shop might be tolerable, they're not horses that will take you to the top, and you'll find yourself having a harder time competing against other players with them. Having said that, there's two key parts currently that make a horse in Story of Alicia. These two parts are its skill set and its physical appearance. When a horse is born, both stats and physical appearance are decided through random number generation, with some influence from its parents and ancestors. Breeding two horses that look identical physically does not guarantee getting a foal that is identically similar to both parents, but the odds of receiving a foal that does look similar to these horses is higher. A horse's skill set is comprised of its stats and potential. Stats generally follow the parents, but it's always possible to get a foal with less stats than both parents, or more than, although in some cases you'll find the former. All horses in-game are categorized by their grade. A horse's current grade is determined by how many total stat points it has. All horses can be trained 30 stat points up from their starting stats, meaning they go up to 3 grades higher than they are initially born as. The higher number the grade, the more total stats the horse has, and therefore, the better for racing they are. Horses can only be registered as studs if they are grade 8 or below, and grade 9 and up horses can only be used for breeding with studs from your My Horses box. The most desirable of these grades is grade 8, and you'll find that most people are breeding with these horses, so make sure not to level a horse to grade 9 before registering it for breeding if that is your intention. Having high stat horses means an easier time for you as a player in races, and grade 8 horses are the most lucrative of all grades to breed. The most popular stats to breed for are control, speed, or strength. Control and speed are good for magic, whereas strength and speed is good for speed races. You should focus on breeding the stats that you prefer to race with, although if you are unsure, control is always a good option for new players. This isn't meant to be an in-depth guide on stats, although I do have an older video from the time of Alicia Online that is still mostly right and explains them more if you're curious in regards to magic racing. I plan to make a newer video about this soon. The second optional component of a horse's skill set is potential. Potential is an additional skill set that horses can also acquire randomly, or more likely through ancestry. Potential has a range of 0 to 100, which levels up as the horse levels up. However, the max 100 isn't guaranteed, and requires a potential ancestry in order to appear. There's a lot of different types, although I won't delve into potential entirely today. The main point I want you to take away is that potential is an additional layer to a horse's skill set, and will make them more desirable in regards to breeding. It's not necessary, and it can be difficult to breed due to its lower pass-on rate, but it's certainly advantageous in races and in the breeding market. Physical appearance is comprised of the horse's coat color, its mane, its tail, as well as the color of the mane and tail. At the moment in Story of Alicia, horses are born with matching mane and tail color. Physical appearance, as previously mentioned, is both RNG and ancestry related, meaning that breeding horses together with recurring physical traits increases the odds of them appearing in a foal born from that ancestry. However, it isn't guaranteed and is especially difficult to replicate more stars each trait has. In the breeding barn, you may notice a search feature, and in that search feature shows a catalog of coats, manes, and tail options for horses. As you can see, some coats are 1-star, 2-star, or even 3-star. Most manes are 1-star and a few are 2-star. Almost all tails are 1-star, except for one. Generally speaking, the higher the stars, the more sought after that physical trait is. So, that means that 3-star coats are in high demand, horses with any of the 3's 2-star manes, spiky, long, or curly, are in higher demand, and horses with a curly tail are also in higher demand. That also means that it's more difficult to get a horse that has a combination of the 2 and 3-star traits, since they're harder to get. Now that we understand what makes up a horse, it's time to look at the breeding barn itself and the interface. You can find it under Care, Breeding, and the menu will open up to you. The interface is separated into 3 different parts: a box that shows your horses, a menu that shows horses up for stud, and an area that shows you stud horses and their stats. Let's unpack My Horses first. Here, the game shows you the coat, the lineage, the grade, and the number of consecutive full successes your horse has had. Additionally, you can select a horse and press the register button to register a horse for breeding, although I recommend waiting to register any horses for breeding until you have one that you feel confident will make money, which I'll talk more about later. The one piece that does matter though is the lineage section. This shows how many times a coat color reoccurs in your horse's ancestry, and the higher the number, the more prevalent. Lineage starts at +1, meaning it's the only horse in its ancestry with that coat, going up to +9, meaning every horse in its ancestry has that same coat, and therefore the color is more likely to pass on. You may notice my horses have some weird naming conventions, but I'll talk about that later in another segment of the video, as it can get a little tricky. That concludes the My Horses box. Let's move on to the stud horse menu. In the stud horse menu, right away there's a lot more information available to us. The horse's name, coat, and lineage, genetics, pregnancy chance, and the ability to add a horse to a short list of favorites to keep track of them. Lineage on these horses works the same. The higher the number, the more likely the horse's coat will pass on. Additionally, you can right-click on any horse on the list to see their ancestry. This can be important to see what other coats are present, but also seeing names that might indicate additional information, which we'll talk about next in the naming segment. The genetics arrow indicates how likely the horse is to pass on its physical traits. An up arrow indicates high likelihood, but downward pointing arrows indicate it's less likely. Most horses by default will start with an up arrow. However, rare coats tend to always be down or lay completely horizontal. Next is the fee. The fee is set by players when registering their horses, and generally it scales depending on the lineage, physical traits, the horse's stats, and whether or not the horse does or does not have potential. Having said that, some players will price more kindly and accurately to their horse's real value than others. Next is the pregnancy chance. Pregnancy chance is indicated by the amount of hearts, and the more hearts a horse has, the higher the likelihood that the pairing will yield a foal. I generally don't breed with horses lower than 2.5 hearts personally, since that's where I find the rate at which I get foals really starts to drop, and I only get cards, but really it's up to you when you decide to stop going with one horse. And lastly, you can add a horse to your favorites list, check it on your favorites, and also delete horses from said favorites when you're done. And that concludes the studs box. Last but not least, the stud preview. Here you can see what the stud looks like, its mane and tail, as well as hair color and the horse's stats. The pink bar on top indicates your horse's skills in one area, while the orange indicates the stud horse's skills in that same area. It also displays the exact number values on the side. Now that we've unpacked the breeding menu, let's talk about naming conventions and acronyms. Although many people give their personal horses in-game actual names if they're keepers, a lot of the more hardcore breeders name their foals in a way that communicates information about the horse to other prospective breeders. It's not uncommon to see a whole lot of nonsense-looking letters and numbers, like CCXLC, or 86X100, NP, or something similar. Basically, all of these letters are acronyms, and what they stand for depends on the arrangement of the letters and numbers. When two letters are combined, like CC or SC, it's communicating the parent of the horse's mane and tail. Players can't see in an ancestry what mane and tail types the parents have, so breeders will use the namespace as a way to communicate it. Horses with recurring 2-star manes and tails, even in their ancestry, are more likely to pass on the trait, so knowing what the parents were can be helpful for breeders trying to get these specific traits. Additionally, you might notice various brackets and letters in a horse's name at the front, and this indicates a breeding tag. A breeding tag works kind of like a brand. It indicates who bred this horse, builds some credibility if their name reoccurs throughout the horse's ancestry, and can point you towards who to contact if you have a question about the horse in relation to the various community-based breeding advertisement servers, which is where you can usually find the breeders with these tags. It is very much a personal choice and is more so common with potential breeders, but it has no direct impact on the horse by being named with it. Listed on the screen are all of the current acronyms used most frequently in-game in regards to manes and tails. Let's practice reading this ancestry here. So this horse has a breeder tag of XX. As we can see, the XX tag appears in the previous generations of horses. The horse has SCXSL, which stands for Spiky Curly X Spiky Long. That means the parents of this foal were Spiky Curly and Spiky Long. Additionally, it has 1+1 in its name, which is the name of a potential in-game, so this horse also has potential. Next, let's look at the parents of this horse. What's immediately sticking out to me is that all of the horses in this black horse's ancestry are black Sabinos, which means there might be a chance that you could get a black Sabino from this horse despite it being a black horse. The sire, indicated by the S symbol, is named White Mane Line, which most likely means that this specific horse came from a line or lineage of horses that had white manes. The other parent has the name SCXSC, which means Spiky Curly X Spiky Curly, communicating that the parents or grandparents of the horse we're currently looking at were Spiky Curly. An additional random number is not uncommon with these types of short formulaic type names because you can't name a horse the same thing, so it's easy to just throw a random number at the end of the name if you already have a horse with that same name. Now, of course, as the game currently stands, it's possible people lie about this information for the sake of getting more breeds. This isn't a new issue, and I'm sure it'll be prevalent for the time being, but maybe in the future there'll be a way to track a horse's mane and tail in the ancestry. The only real way to tell is utilizing horse breeding ad spaces, where players might show photos of the grandparents and parents of a foal that's registered, but not all people do this. As of now, honesty is the best policy, and if you lie about your horse's ancestry,
you will suffer the consequences in due time.
Next is the potential acronyms. As mentioned, potential is a skill a horse can inherit or acquire randomly that helps in races. I did just recently find out through one of the Story of Alicia developers that actually 3-star coats have a higher chance of delivering potential to their foals. So if you're looking to breed potential horses, try to get rare coats and use those to breed potential lines because they'll have an easier time than the common coats. Listed on screen once again are all of the potentials as well as the acronyms that are associated with these potentials. Sometimes players will also just name the horse the full name of the potential as well. I advise you when breeding potential horses to double check the ancestry of said horse and see if it does in fact look legit. You can kind of tell if it's fake based on whether or not parents on both sides seem to be potential focused, or if it's just repeatedly horses with the potential related naming conventions only appearing on the player's line of horses instead of on the opposite side as well. Additionally, players will also go back and rename horses once the potential is leveled up. For example, this horse is named 85 Opportunity, indicating that he was a horse with 85 out of 100 opportunity potential. If you do want to have a potential horse with a real name, but still want players to understand that it has potential, I personally choose a horse's name, then put the max potential value in parentheses. Another common potential horse naming format you might run into is a number, X, another number, or UNK or NP, and then in parentheses, another acronym. Sounds super confusing, I know, but basically what it means is that it's the one parent's max potential value, X, the other parent's max potential value, and then in parentheses, it's either NP, which means no potential, or whatever the suitable potential acronym is that I showed previously on my list of acronyms. Let's try some more examples. 75x UNK, in parentheses, OPP. What does this mean? The horse we're looking at had a parent that was 75 out of 100 max potential value. The other parent had potential, but it was not fully classed up, meaning we don't know its max potential value. And in the parentheses, OPP means this horse has opportunity potential. Labeling horses is helpful not only for yourself, but also for other players that want to breed with your horses. I recommend doing it, it's not required, and if you do have any questions about the naming conventions for these types of horses, feel free to ask. Plenty of people are knowledgeable, and it just takes a bit of practice to get good at knowing these things. What I would do if I was getting started in Story of Alicia. So if I was just getting started in Story of Alicia, or maybe I'm still pretty early in the game, maybe my horses aren't that great, if you don't already have a grade 8 horse, this is what I would do. So the first thing I would do is go to the shop and purchase one of these grade 7 chestnut horses. Now they might look ugly and not that great, but these horses have better base stats than the starter horse that is currently in the game that you get upon signing up. If you're into magic racing, choose between either the control or speed horse. For most people, the control is going to be the best one to buy, as that is the most beginner-friendly stat. However, if you're familiar with speed and know how to play it, feel free to give speed a try as well. There's also the strength horse for anybody who prefers speed racing. After buying your grade 7 horse, you're going to want to head over to the items tab in the shop, scroll all the way down till you see the growth elixir. This is going to allow you to instantly grow your foals, otherwise you have to wait an hour to grow them. You're not going to use it on every foal, just use it on the ones that are going to forward your breeding progress, which I will explain to you. The last thing I recommend having before starting to breed horses is at least 200,000 carats saved up, ideally 300,000, 400,000, even 500,000. More than likely, in the first 200 to 300k, you'll be able to get your first goal met with your horses. However, there is times where the luck is just really, really bad, and if that is the scenario, you might need to spend a bit more money than anticipated to get your first decent horse. When you're satisfied with the amount of money you have before breeding, head on over to the breeding barn under care and breeding. Once you're here, you might need to manually change the grade up from 4 or 5 up to 8. It's located right here, you just want to press the right button until you're all the way over to 8. The horses below grade 8 are just so bad they're not even worth messing with. We're going to get right into it by going to the filter button and filtering out horses that have our specific stats we want. So because I bought a control horse, I'm going to look for control, but if you bought a speed, you'll be looking for full speed. If you run speed races, well, you know what stats are best for that, I'm sure. Now, some people recommend getting right into breeding with 3-star coats initially, but I personally like to instead focus on 2-star manes and 2-star tails. The reason for this is that no matter the coat, a 2-star combo horse will almost always get breeds, especially if it's grade 8 with high stats. And although right now racing brings in a lot of money, it's not guaranteed that the carrot bonus is going to be a forever sort of thing, so treat carrots like a finite resource. And get horses that you know people are going to breed with, and therefore you'll have a consistent, reliable form of income. Now, initially when I did this, I realized that almost all of these 2-star combo horses I was seeing were either low hearts at 10k or higher hearts at 15k, 20k, 30k, and although I'm not opposed to paying that much normally, I don't think it's reasonable for new players to be spending any more than 10k on their first grade 8 breeds, so I decided instead to expand my search from just 2-star manes and tails to 2-star manes with a 2-star tail and the long, thick tail as well. I encourage you to do this if you also run into the same problem when filtering for 2-star tails only. Now, after changing the filtration settings, I got some better options available to me for cheaper. Although they do not have a curly tail, that is something that can be worked for, and focusing on at least the 2-star mane is the most important thing. I found this horse here, and I right-clicked to check its ancestry, and it had a couple of 3-star coats, including 2 whites and some blacks. And when breeding with horses, I encourage you to check the ancestries, because it's possible for a 3-star coat to show up on a foal if you breed with that horse, if there is 3-star horses in its ancestry. This horse's control stat was well above my own, which meant it was a suitable candidate to pair with my horse, and from there I pressed the breed button. The first foal was a chestnut pinto, however, it was not a grade 8. Your first goal should be getting a grade 8, or at least a grade 7 that has a higher total stat value, or a better stat in your main stat value than your current horse. I let the foal go and tried again. This time around, I got cards, which is very normal. If your breeding fails, the game will give you a sort of compensation prize, although it's really not that much money at all. You can reduce the amount of fails you have while breeding by breeding with horses with a higher pregnancy chance. Personally, I never breed with horses below 2 hearts, as I just never really get foals from them. Although it's frustrating, this breeding system is designed to kind of be a gamble, and the lows are really low, but when you finally get something good, it's like an amazing, wonderful reward. Speaking of wonderful rewards, I finally got a grade 8 horse. Since this horse doesn't have 2-star combo on both sides, I decided to just name it Spiky Parent, which tells people that, hey, one of its parents had Spiky. But other than that, it's nothing too amazing this early in. I recommend instant growing your first grade 8 horse. Whenever you get a horse that you think could be a level up from your current one, always instant grow it. As you can see, it's not amazing, but it has a long thick tail, and it has better stats than my previous horse. So that means this horse is going to get to stay, and my previous one is going to go. Now, with the better horse that I just got, I'm gonna look for another horse that meets my requirements. This one seemed okay, but I noticed there was actually a 3-star chestnut stocking a little bit further down. If you can find a 3-star coat for very cheap to breed with that meets the physical and stat requirements that we're looking for here, definitely give it a shot. You can sometimes get really lucky and get a 3-star coat regardless, and trust me, luck goes a long way in this game in terms of improving your line of horses. So I bred with this horse a total of 3 times, and none of those 3 times did it have a foal, so eventually I gave up and I tried with a different horse, and that one also failed. And then I did finally get another grade 8 foal. I decided to instant grow this one as well in hopes that maybe it would have a nicer mane than the one I currently had. I named it Spiky Ants because 2 of its relatives had spiky mane by this point, and I got lucky and got a long mane. So this was a good step up from the previous horse, so I decided to use this one now, going forward for breeding, and not really spend any time on the previous one. Conveniently, while I was looking at the market, a really nice, cheap, spiky curly horse with black ancestry happened to go on the market, so I really rushed to get in on it while it still had a good pregnancy chance. A lot of getting good horses in this game also just comes down to good opportunity. If you see a horse that looks really cheap for what it is, don't hesitate, speedrun it, try to get as many foals in as possible, because some people will price horses lower than they're worth, and you really gotta take advantage of it when it happens. I bred with this one horse a bunch of times and just wasn't really getting anything that was better than the horse I had at the time. The breeding system is just a lot of RNG and luck, as I've said, expect some fails. After breeding with that one a couple times, miraculously, something really wonderful happened. As I mentioned, you gotta take advantage of special moments, and this was a spiky, curly amber cream, albeit with +1 lineage, so not likely to give me an amber cream, but still, breeding with a 3-star coat, especially one with spiky curly, really opens up the door for a lot of really good opportunities, full-wise. Now, the first 2 babies with this horse were not good, but I did not let this deter me. I kept going, and the next one was also not that great. I was hoping it would have a spiky curly, but it didn't. And on the 3rd breed, something really nice happened. As I said before, breeding with a 3-star coat, even if it's one that isn't necessarily good lineage-wise, really increases the chance of getting a 3-star coat. So I got a black, which is a 3-star coat, my first 3-star with this system I'm following here. So I named it Spiky Curly XLL because L stands for long, L also stands for long thick, and he happened to have a spiky mane and a long thin tail. So I considered at first breeding this horse with a different horse, but I resorted to something a bit horrible in nature. Yeah, are you putting the pieces together right now while watching this? Listen, I know it sounds wrong, but a lot of people do this in game. It works. It's a genuinely proven method. And this horse still had a lot of hearts, and there was no way I was going to let that go to waste since it's really such a good horse for such a good price. So I went quick as I could, kept breeding these horses back to back, and my luck struck once again, and I managed to get an amber cream. It's honestly crazy because, like, the thing is, yeah, I'm playing on an account that's got millions of carrots, but I'm breeding with horses that are completely new, they've got no lineage at all, and within 30 minutes I was able to get a spiky curly amber. This is a pretty sought after horse for most people, so I was really happy I was able to get this. Now, it's not perfect, it doesn't have a very high lineage value. Obviously, the higher the lineage, the more valuable it is, but still, this was pretty damn good for just 30 minutes. And there you have it. That is what I would do if I was a new player coming into the breeding system on Story of Alicia. Now, I did get lucky a bit sooner than I expected. However, if you don't get lucky as soon as I have a general guideline here for the goals and the order in which I achieve them, or try to achieve them, when breeding horses in this game. First and foremost, get a grade 8 horse. This is the foundation for being able to race, really. The next goal is getting a grade 8 horse with a 2-star combo mane and tail. These horses, as you've seen, can make a decent bit of money, and even if they're not your personal cup of tea, having horses that you can register to make money so you can afford to breed the horses that you really want is important. Goal number 3 is getting a grade 8 horse with a 3-star coat with any mane and tail. Ideally, you want this horse to have a bit of a lineage that's related to its 3-star coat, so think like a black horse that's +5. Any mane and tail, but definitely bonus points if it has one of the 2-star mane and tails. Personally, how I would go about this is using that 2-star combo mane and tail horse you have, breed it with some cheap +9 lineage black horses. Black horses are very frequently occurring in the market, but they also are cheap. Generally, you can usually find a cheap-ish one, so they're a good entry-level 3-star coat. Goal number 4 is get a grade 8 horse with a 3-star coat with +9 lineage. So you want all of the horses in the 3-star coat horse's ancestry to have that same coat. This might take a little bit longer than the previous goals, but the benefit of accomplishing this one is that you have an easier way to breed 3-star coats. Additionally, any offspring from this horse will most likely make a decent bit of money due to its ancestry. And the last goal for most people is going to be getting a grade 8 3-star coat with +9 lineage and a 2-star combo mane and tail. Having a horse like this is going to make it significantly easier, again, to breed consistent 3-star coat colors with nice manes and nice tails that you'll be able to register for more money than some of the lower quality 3-star coat horses you'll have previously. Generally, the 5th goal is the end goal for most breeders. Now, if you want to make it a little bit more difficult, you can of course add trying to breed for potential into the mix, but do note that breeding for potential horses is a bit more difficult and will take a lot of time and patience, as well as some dedication in terms of classing up all of those potential horses to breed the maximum value horse. Additionally, I want you to know that you don't need to breed with wonderful horses with 2-star manes and tails all of the time. There have been numerous occasions where I have bred my 2-star combo horse with a horse that is less than high quality and managed to get a 2-star combo 3-star coat from it. It's not super common, and it does definitely take some luck, but it's doable, and it's a lot more affordable than breeding with the really high-priced horses, as mentioned before. Speaking of pricing horses, I'm going to give you a loose explanation on how I personally register my horses and how I choose their stud fees. I kind of follow a general checklist, and I use that to decide how much I'm going to price a horse for. When registering a grade 8 horse for breeding, the price always starts at 10k, but I always add a little bit depending on what qualities it has. So, if the horse has a 2-star mane, I always add 5k, as 2-star manes are pretty sought after, more so than the curly tail, which if it has that, I always add 2.5k to the fee. If the horse happens to have +7 lineage on a 3-star coat, that also adds an additional 5k. If the horse has a low or unleveled potential, it'll be an additional 5k, but if the horse has high max potential, then it's going to be an additional 10k. Although not everybody will follow this, and they'll encourage you to put even more, I personally always price horses in a way where it'd be a price that I would be comfortable breeding for. So for example, this horse has +9 lineage on a 3-star coat, doesn't have a special mane or tail or potential, it would be a 15k horse for me. If registering horses seems a bit intimidating and you're still worried about how to decide what price is best, feel free to ask people in the Alicia community, especially in the global chat or in the Story of Alicia Discord server. Generally, people are pretty helpful and they'll tell you what they think your horse is personally worth. And when in serious doubt, just put the price a little bit lower than maybe you think it's worth. Additionally, any 3-star coat with +9 lineage and 2-star mane and tail combo can be registered for 40k, and pretty much every time will make a lot of money. Now, you might have noticed that once your horse's hearts deplete past a certain point when the horse is registered for breeding, players just will no longer breed with it. And that's because the chance of getting a full is quite low. It's very normal to unregister them and let them go if they're not a keeper. However, if you want to keep using this horse for breeding, and you plan to use it for breeding, what I would recommend you do is clean the horse until it has the 2-star beauty bonus. Doing this will increase the horse's pregnancy chance when breeding with other horses, and also will allow for the horse to have a higher chance of the genetics passing on. This was the pregnancy chance and genetics arrow before, and here it is after. Additionally, doing this little trick will slightly increases your horse's pregnancy chance if you register them for breeding while they have the 2-star beauty bonus. However, it is so small and marginal that it maybe isn't necessarily worth it to do it for every horse you register for breeding. The last little tip I have for you is for those of you looking to breed potential horses. Potential horses require a decent bit of classing up in order to actually see what their max potential value is. A horse will reach its max potential value at class 24, which can take many in-game hours to level up manually in races. However, if you're the type of person who's okay letting your game run in the background, or AFK, while you're playing, there is a way to auto-class your horse and make breeding for potentials and training them a lot easier. First things first, you're going to want to have the Story of Alicia launcher open as well as a notepad window. Once you have that, click enter the playtest, grab the notepad window, hold the up arrow on your keyboard, and start spinning the notepad window with your cursor. From there, you can let go of the up arrow and the notepad window once the game has loaded in, and from there, just click into the game like normal. Once you're in your ranch, you're going to want to click the race button on the bottom, and then click on training. Once you're in the training menu, make sure you're on the time attack mode and set the map to Phoebe Fields. Once the map loads in, what you're going to want to do is press your forward and right directional key. Make sure your horse is running in a spot where it can make a complete circle while galloping, so that way it doesn't run into any walls. Once you're on a good track, you're going to press Alt and Tab at the same time while holding those directional keys, and it will open up all of your windows at that time. Click on one of the windows you'd like to escape to, and your horse will continue running in the background while you work, or you can walk away from your desk. Your horse will be maximum potential value at class 24, which requires 6 hours of auto-classing. You can also use auto-classing to class up low-grade horses. I hope this guide was helpful. I apologize. I know it is super duper long, but there's so many little intricate details to this system, and it's also so random, and I know there's so many questions people have about it, so I tried my best to cover most of it. I'll try to section off the different parts in chapters, hopefully, fingers crossed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any additional questions, and good luck breeding your horses.